Trivia, the best time of the year. It's trivia time, plus 4 a.m. fights, a classic elimination. And what the hell is Derek wearing? It's the Challenge All-Stars Episode 2 recap coming up right now. What up, my fellow Challenge lovers? Welcome to the Challenge Historian, where we dive deep into all things MTV's The Challenge, past, present, or future. If it's happening in the Challenge universe, then we are here to document it. I am your host and dedicated Challenge Historian, Jacob Hollabaugh. Thank you so very, very much for being here with us today. On today's pod, we are talking all things The Challenge All-Stars Episode 2. The game is truly underway at this point. We've got another killer episode with a lot to cover. So let's open those history books and go straight on in to our section-by-section breakdown of this episode, All-Stars Episode 2. Here we go. All right, so action picks up right where we left off after Episode 1. Post-elimination, Laterrian victorious, everyone coming back to the house, and producer in the field, Mark Long, has to explain to Laterrian that the new rule on the challenge, when you win an elimination, when you walk back in the house, you got to go in first with your hands held high and, kind of give a gesture and a smile to the camera. So thankfully, Mark's there to produce Laterrian a little bit, let him know that he's supposed to act like he's having a good time. But we get a couple nice moments in a shorter than usual kind of pre-daily challenge segment at the house, because the daily challenge eventually takes a good chunk of the runtime here. But in that pre-daily challenge segment, we've got a couple things worth noting. On the first one, that's kind of interesting to look at, both from where we've been the last few seasons of the regular challenge on Total Madness and Double Agents. A theme that has come up throughout that is hearing about all the different best friends in the challenge universe, and that, as is usual to happen, when a word gets thrown around in the challenge house, it kind of becomes immediate slang, and then it gets used over and over and over and just beat into the ground over and over and over, even when it doesn't totally make sense. And the most recent example of that has been, especially this previous season of Double Agents, everyone having a best friend in the house and not being able to differentiate between their closest alliance in the house and who their best friend in the world is, and just using that best friend term. It's been kind of a running joke the last season or two. But now here on All-Stars, we find out that we have actual legitimate best friends in Katie and Trishelle, that after their time on the challenge way back when, they actually did grow to become great, great friends. They lived together for over 6 years. They were in each other's weddings. It looks like by the picture we see that Katie might even have been the maid of honor in Trishelle's wedding. I mean, she's the closest one standing to her up there by the altar. So usually that's the maid of honor spot. They didn't say that, but at least in the wedding. So actual best friends here on the challenge, or so we think, or are led to believe. We'll come back more later to how good of friends they actually are here today in the moment, and how mad they should be at each other when they actually get mad at each other later. But both great setup for, the rest of the show. We kind of immediately know, it's a women's elimination, they're setting up this Katie Trishelle thing. We kind of know from the jump one of those two is likely, if not both of them, going to be on the chopping block. But then we also get another Trishelle moment that's really great. Her and Aneesa sit down by the fireside, and got to point out the outdoor, we mentioned on the preview pod and the first episode podcast that the whole aesthetic of the challenge house really fit in my personal vibes. Love them being kind of out in the nature, love the cabin, love the summer camp feel. In this episode, we get a view of their outer area, which they've got an amazing fire pit with some great couches and chairs and everything around it. And then also, randomly, while I'm all in favor for it, there's also randomly a foosball table on a slab of concrete way over to one side. There's a pool table on a slab of concrete way over to one side. Who knows if they have to, keep those covered at night themselves, if producers are taking care of that, but just randomly placed throughout the yard, different indoor games posing as lawn games. But anyways, to what actually happens by that fireside, Aneesa and Trishelle have a nice moment where Trishelle apologizes for her previous insensitive remarks that were made back on a previous season years and years ago. And as would be expected, Aneesa handles this with class and grace, accepts the apology, helps all of us get a little more education. We get the clip of what happened previously, acknowledgement of how wrong that it was, and that maybe in the moment we weren't all paying attention to how fucked up it might have been. And as always, Aneesa here to both help us all along in our education on social issues and to do it with grace and class. Awesome little moment there between them. Glad we got to see that. And is one of the fun things about bringing all these OGs back isn't just that some of them, they all have these pasts together, and that those pasts could go one of two ways. It could get worse and worse, or it could get better. We could see, the good side of it like we did here, where beef in the past that went wrong, got ugly real quick, being able to be squashed, move on from, learn from, and, all of us as fans as well get to learn a little from. So that was an awesome moment to get to see that. And again, hats off to Aneesa for handling that situation so well. She's going to come up a few times throughout this, MVP candidate for sure. We'll find out at the end of this podcast if she wins that MVP for this episode, but making an early case for it here. The final thing to talk about before we get into the daily challenge is just Derek's wardrobe. Derek and Kendall have a little moment out. She's doing yoga. Derek appears to be drinking a tall boy, potentially at around 9 or 10 in the morning. I could never get a exact read of what can he was holding, but it was a tall can. I don't know. I'm guessing because of the hour and because they have then went on to do a daily challenge that day. And we do know the challenge has a rule about drinking pre-challenge. I'm guessing it wasn't a tall boy. It was probably an energy drink maybe of some sort or a soda. I'm not sure, but it kind of made for fun with Derek just to run through the full outfit he's wearing. Again, outside the summer camp vibe, out by the pond. Kendall's doing yoga, and up strolls Derek in some big ol' outdoorsman boots, some tie-dye crazy sweatpants that are tie-dye on the top, going all the way to black at the bottom to kind of give him a little grungy tie-dye feel, an MTV Spring Break 91 cutoff, and a pair of those plastic party shades that you only wear when, partying it up, drinking a bunch, knowing that these are $5 shades you got at a gas station, that it's fine if they get broken or lost. And just an absolute iconic fit from Derek. Looks like maybe he just still hasn't changed from the 90s party they had on the previous episode. Maybe the way this is being edited, maybe that conversation happened right before that 90s party, and they're just putting it in this episode to kind of start setting up the Kendall thing. Regardless of how it happened, incredible fit, and getting to see him standing out there in nature next to the river in that outfit was just awesome stuff for Derek. I'm very much looking forward to, already have been enjoying and continue to look forward to the outfits and the wardrobes that these folks are bringing who, had some classic looks back in their day in the 90s and 2000s and even early 2010s on television, how much their wardrobes have updated over the years or not. So great look for Derek. And that's kind of all the notes we got on the pre-daily challenge. So we'll move right on into segment 2 then of the show, which is the daily challenge, which was referenced at the top of this podcast, is trivia, is the best challenge of the season every time. Not just TJ's favorite, my favorite, I think most fans' favorite as far as non-physical stuff goes on this show. Trivia is easily, hands down, the most entertaining thing we get to watch most of the time. Some of the trivias have gone a little off the rails in recent past, but this one, classic trivia. Loved bringing in that, All-Stars OG, making it all challenge-related trivia. Still able to make some fools of some people, have some good laughs the whole time, while also very much playing to this host's preferences with challenge history. So we get trivia, and to say about that right off the top, the thing that I guess I never really thought of while going into this shortened season of All-Stars, while we talked a lot about, how legitimate of a season would it be compared to a regular one as far as what challenges they would be doing, what eliminations they would be doing, how competitive, how cutthroat it would be, all that. The thing we didn't really think through is that because it's this shortened season, it means the only things we're going to see now that they've clearly decided, this is a full-on season. We're doing everything we would do in a regular season. It's just shorter. it means that we're only going to get to see the absolute best challenges, the absolute best eliminations, the fan favorites. And that is just a nice little secret sauce of doing this kind of shortened all-star format of a season, is that we don't have to come up with much new. We don't have to try new random eliminations, new random daily challenges that may work, may not, that may lead to kind of dull episodes. If, a third of it is this daily challenge, that's some new thing that doesn't quite work, isn't that competitive, isn't that fun. So being able to just say, hey, we're going to have the 5, 6, 7 best daily challenges we've ever had. Those are the ones we're doing. The 5, 6, 7 best eliminations we've ever had. Those are the ones we're doing. It's going to be a real strength, a real advantage of this season, and it's already paying off by being able to have trivia in the second episode and not feel like you do. And sometimes with the long seasons, this especially happened falsely on Double Agents, the most recent full season, being that they had Hall Brawl. I think it was either first or second episode of that season, and not knowing that they would bring it back 4 or 5 more times throughout. You see Hall Brawl up front, and you get all excited. You're thinking, maybe I have to wait all season, and now you're getting it right off the jump. But then you realize, now I don't have it the rest of the season, and it's a long season. And again, they did bring it back, so that was kind of a false negative there. But with this one, we know every week it's going to be something awesome, something we love. This week, no different. We get the trivia. And diving into the actual trivia competition itself, first question, is this event just totally favoring people that are skinny and don't weigh as much? Because, it's explained. They got to men go one round, women go the other round. You answer trivia questions. If you get it wrong, you got to take one step forward onto these tiles that there's about 4 of them in front of you. At some point as you step on one, it's not going to hold your weight. You're going to break through, fall to the water below, and you're eliminated. But it's not explained whether, like our Big Easies tiles and text tiles, for instance, the same, like weighted the same, able to hold up the same amount, where it's just super fair for some, unfair for others, or are, they weighted properly to try to be fair. Who knows? It does kind of seem random as they go, what people fall, when they fall, between 1 and 3. Multiple people make it all the way to the end without actually falling through and are asked, hop through. Not sure there, but, that's classic challenge for you. We don't exactly know how everything's working perfectly, if the rules are 100% in favor of everyone and a, equal chance at winning. But made for a great challenge, made for great visuals, made for great trivia. I think they really nailed it. The trivia, while the questions can be, better than some seasons than others, the other big part of it is just the visual of when you lose. It's always almost, I think, every time they've ever done it, or at least since it kind of really first came around, it's always over water. You're always going to end up in water when you lose trivia. But sometimes the contraptions of how they fall into the water both either don't work 100% like they think they're going to make a cool visual or a fun moment for the competitors, or sometimes also lead to really horrible falls and really dangerous setups, where this one was nice that except for poor Katie, who we'll touch on in a moment, everyone falls suddenly but very straight down into the water, not really putting themselves at much risk of having a nasty landing. So then on to the actual competition itself. The men not very impressive, to be honest. Derek and Darrell at first seemed to have their knowledge down, which would make sense having been on, in the world the longest, both with Derek being in the show and with the podcast now, and Darrell being in the show from the early days, coming back in recent seasons. You would think those two might have an upper hand at having paid attention and been a part of the most of the stuff, but eventually even they, aren't getting things very right. The men go down rather quickly, and we end up with Nehemiah versus Tech, which no disrespect to Tech, but shows how bad the men did in general. That Tech was one of the last two standing when he admits, he was on one season of the show a long, long time ago, and he hasn't exactly paid, detailed attention since. So he was clearly, surprised he was there at the end, almost pulls off the win. We'll get to TJ faking him out in just a moment, but Nehemiah eventually gets the win on the male side, wins the Lifesaver Award. Then the women go. The women put on much better show than the men do. They're answering questions correct left and right. Even some of the ladies that don't feel like they're going to do well, do really well, including, and worth pointing out, both Aneesa and Ruthie just putting on an absolute clinic. They end up being the last two. They answer at least what they show us, which we never know if they're showing us, every single question or not. 3 or 4 answers in a row. Once it's 2 versus 2, just back and forth, correct. Ruthie gets one wrong, has to step forward, doesn't fall. Aneesa gets one wrong, has to step forward, doesn't fall. Another correct. And then finally, Ruthie does bow out at the end, answers one incorrectly, and is one of those we mentioned. Gets all the way to the 4th tile, so it also has a little bit of luck along the way of, being one of the lighter people, maybe being in calmer, easy steps there to get to that final tile, but TJ has to let her know, yep, you just got to kind of hop up and down and fall in the water now. That's too many incorrect. Aneesa gets the win. Great performance by her, but definitely coming into this would have been the heavy betting favorite coming into this challenge. Both she's been great at trivia in the past, and again, as we mentioned with the Derek and Darrell on the male side, Aneesa has been here for all of this. She's been a part of it. I didn't keep track of how many questions were about individual challengers, but Aneesa, both incorrectly a couple times, was thrown out as an answer, but correctly was the answer or was a part of the season or elimination or whatever. That was the correct answer. So she was literally a part of a lot of this stuff, which gave her a bit of an advantage, but she also has a great head on her shoulders, has an awesome memory, it seems, from Trivia's past and this one. So hats off to her. Great win. She is safe from elimination. Final piece of the daily challenge to then talk about is the man having more fun than any of us. That is TJ Lavin. Has to be discussed here at length. TJ loves trivia more than anyone else. He clearly loves his job as host of the challenge. He absolutely should. But this is the moment every season that he clearly looks forward to. I don't think that I bet it's probably in his contract that he will not host a season if trivia is not one of the daily challenges. And he's always having a great time during trivia, but this one is on a whole new level. And watching him have so much fun, have so much glee and joy at watching people fall into the water, telling them they have incorrect answers, is just great TV. You love to see it. Awesome work by TJ. A few examples worth pointing out that will double as contenders for the quote of the episode later on. So, I mean, everything he does, this whole trivia is perfect. We could literally just play the clip of every word out of his mouth, every gleeful laugh out of his mouth. But 3 things to point out the most that I really, really had a good time with. First off, Katie's sadly going to come up twice during this. The first one, though, not really that bad of a look for her, but was TJ having to read former quotes by cast members in his line reading. The one time his energy level completely drops is when he decides that, he should not go for it. He should not try to read an Aneesa quote. Anything like Aneesa would have said it. Just gives the monotone reading of a vicious Aneesa quote. Check it out here.
All right. Which challenge legend said, "I don't need a gauntlet, bitch. I will cut you with words"?
I mean, it sounds like it's Coral.
I don't need a gauntlet, bitch. I will cut you with words.
Katie, who was it?
Me.
That's Aneesa.
And you were there.
Have a step.
I can't.
Just kills me every time. Shout out Aneesa again being perfect. The Katie, me. You were there. Just unbelievable. And unfortunately for Katie, our second thing worth pointing out of just fantastic work from TJ is again at Katie's demise, as she gives what had to be, at least by his response, the most disappointing answer that TJ heard all trivia game here, and he let Katie know just that. Here we go.
So, Katie, How many players participated in the elimination rounds on the island?
1.
Oh my God, Katie, it is an elimination round. How would one just play himself? Like, what is he
They
gonna
didn't
do?
even
Just,
have challenges on that show.
I mean, it was 3, Katie. So I'm gonna need you to take a step and say, see you later.
I mean, that's hilarious, but it's also a little bit cruel. But it's mostly hilarious. It's entertaining. Katie's a great sport. She could take it and just, I mean, TJ has made fun plenty of trivia people in the past, but that one was some real contempt and some real disappointment at, it's one thing to get it wrong, but one doesn't even work. It's the only answer that you shouldn't have had. And then finally, on the men's round, he finishes out the men's round so perfectly, just, capping off. Wonderful hosting job, proving how great of a host he is. Tech is up, him versus Nehemiah, down to the final questions. Next answer incorrect, loses. Tech doesn't know the answer. He goes with the guess of the gauntlet, and TJ absolutely fakes him out perfectly. Take a listen.
Okay, I'm just gonna go with my gut and I'm gonna say the gauntlet.
The answer is the gauntlet.
Fuck yeah!
3.
Damn!
See you later, Ted. Oh, that was good.
Must be noted here, TJ has tried to do similar things quite a bit in recent years, especially the last few seasons when it comes to eliminations, when they don't know if it's a guy or girl's elimination. He loves to kind of throw the fake outs either way. Some of them have worked, some of them not so much. This one obviously worked absolutely perfectly. He fooled Tech completely, and at Tech's expense, we all get a great laugh. TJ, just a fantastic moment, fantastic performance. We will come back to him later on as he is an MVP candidate in this episode himself. But that wraps up the trivia. Anissa safe, Nehemiah with the lifesaver shield, and Trishelle, first female out, going straight into elimination. So we will move on then from the daily challenge into the next section of the show, the deliberation and house hangout section. All right, so we're back at the house then, post-daily challenge, and quite a bit happens between the daily challenge and the elimination. Let's go through all the major points one by one here. The first thing is immediately everyone gets back, and a group breaks off to talk strategy, to talk who Trishelle might want to go into the elimination again. So if we remember back in the first episode, the first deliberation, they did agree to some level that they were going to let whoever goes into the elimination pick their person to go against, or at least they're going to hear them out who they would want to go against. We'll see how long into the season that this trend actually goes. My guess is not super far. At some point, someone will not actually want that whoever they pick to go in, and they will do something about it. But on this one, a group of 5 or 6 get together, and the thing that needs to be pointed out is while, Trishelle is at the center of this group because it's everyone asking her who they want to go against, Mark Long is the one they're all looking to within this group. And when there's kind of moments of indecision, everyone kind of glances towards him, and that's when he kind of glances around, realizes everyone's looking at him, and chimes in his own and is willing to step in and say, okay, if that's what we're doing, when we get to deliberation, I'll say this. Is that good? And it's kind of assumed that he's going to be the spokesperson and the leader. And it seems like it's not just this group of 6 or 7 that get together in this moment. It feels like he has that position within the entire house at this point. And we talked on the preview podcast about why Mark sits at the top of our power rankings going into the season after episode 1. We'll see if he still sits there at the end of episode 2. But spoiler alert, he does, because it seems like being the one responsible for this whole season even existing, being the one that reached out to all these people, that got this ball rolling, that got them excited, got them invested in signing on to come back in, that he both has a good relationship with all of these people across the board, that they all look to him as someone that they kind of owe him for being there. They're all excited to be there. They're all excited to be back, making some money, having some fun, being on TV, kind of reviving this reality TV career if they want to, and that he's, the one responsible for it, more or less. And that gives him an incredible position of power and influence in the house. And it's something we thought was going to happen coming in. And it seems there's little subtle moments like this one where, everyone kind of just keeps looking to him, at the end of every discussion to say, is that good by you? Do you agree? Do you want to say the final sentiment here? So I think that bodes well. At some point, someone in the house is obviously going to, I would hope, realize that and maybe make a run at him to get him out. But he seems in total control in all these little strategic meetings. Next thing to say is at the actual, then we move very quickly into the actual deliberation itself out in the field where they all go and half sit down, half stand up, have their, carved out faces behind them. A great little deliberation room. I love that it's outdoors this time. Can't wait for, it's going to have to rain or something at some point during one of these deliberations, and they're going to have to audible the inside, but awesome outdoor deliberation area. And during that deliberation, it goes pretty quick. Gisela chimes in immediately or I should say Mark opens it with Trishelle said we can pick whoever we want. She doesn't have a choice. Gisela immediately jumps in then with, Kendall didn't finish the challenge today. She chose to sit and basically sit up on the platform next to TJ instead of jumping through and falling to the water because she was scared of falling through the water, which puts Kendall on the spot, which leads to an absolutely hilarious montage of what, it was 45 to 60 seconds on our screen, but because they kept cutting in and out, it seems like it might have been a 2 to 3 to 4 minute, who knows how long, of an attempted explanation by Kendall of what happened up on that platform and why she chose not to jump off. She's jumping around. She's claiming her mouth is dry. She's, acting a bit frantic. She's going way in depth on her explanations of each step that she took up there, how she would have hopped if she hopped. It's just hilarious to watch, and it convinces everyone in the house that, easy target here. No one's going to have any qualms if we all just say Kendall's name. And as Kendall ends her explanation with, Gisela, you fell second. I would vote for you. Gisela comes right back. Well, I'll vote for Kendall. Everyone quickly chimes in. We vote for Kendall, except for Darrell with a classic burn vote. Darrell, good friends from back, both on Road Rules Campus Crawl, original show he and Kendall shared together. Also on Kendall's single season of the challenge Inferno. Her and Darrell were on the same team, won together, so he doesn't want to vote for her. He throws a burn vote towards Katie, gets a good laugh, and is secretly just, one of those little tiny smart moves that, whether it actually has an impact or not, that Darrell, being the smart one, realizes he's at the end of the voting poll here. That's not going to hurt anything. There's no chance of that burn vote backfiring. So doesn't even say his friend's name, even if she would have totally understood. Says another friend's name who would totally understand the burn vote and get the laugh and have fun with it. So good veteran moment from him. And deliberation's over. Kendall's going in. Kendall versus Trishelle. But before we can get to the elimination, we are back at the house, and we get a quick cut, and a time pops up at the bottom of our screen, 4:12 in the morning. And let me back up. I jumped ahead just mildly. What actually instigated this? Right after the deliberation, everyone heads back to the house. Trishelle waiting up in her bedroom, and she is upset to see that the first person to come tell her who was nominated is Derek, and that her friend, Katie, her best friend, as we found out at the beginning of the episode, decides to get in the food line first along with everyone else. And it gets very, very upset that Derek has to come up and tell her who it is. And eventually Katie comes up and to tell her as well, presumably. But now Trishelle already knows. She's already upset with Katie. And we get the first round, very short round in this case. But that of a little bit of a fight between the two that would then continue later on. Well, before we get to that later on, that 4:12 in the morning, it is worth pointing out that the edit kind of causes a little bit of confusion for me here of how upset Trishelle should be. Yes, on principle, I agree with her that, hey, I've got someone in the house that I'm this close with that not only outside the game is such a good friend of mine, but in the game is my number one. I'm up for elimination. I'm waiting to find out who I'm going against. If the roles were reversed, I would be the first one running up to find Katie and tell her, hey, this is who it is. This is how it all went down. Catch you up on all the info you need to know. I totally get that argument. And at first glance would be like, yeah, Trishelle's got a point. She should definitely be upset. Only thing I will say in Katie's defense, that the edit the brief time they show her actually getting the food, it's clearly a long buffet line and everyone's in line. So it does truly look like they came back from deliberation and were told, hey, when you walk back in that house, like food is here and is served, like time to eat. And if you've ever been, I'm sure we've all been in buffet lines before, or especially, not at a restaurant or whatever, but in maybe if you've been to any type of conference where, you break for lunch and have a buffet or anything like that. You don't want to be at the end of that line. You don't know what all is going to be left if, they have enough of everything for everyone to get as much as they want of everything. And especially in a challenge house, the way everything goes, it's not always the cleanliest place. I want to get in there, get my food first, and get in front of that line versus being the one that goes upstairs and come back down 10 minutes later when everything's been picked through. So I don't 100% fault Katie for being like, maybe I grab a quick plate, then I head up. And also with that, it seems like that's exactly what she did. They immediately got in line, got food, went upstairs, and that Derek, while they kind of made it seem like, oh, Trishelle, I'm the first one to talk to you. No one's told you yet. It seems like Derek walked immediately upstairs. Like, it doesn't seem like he's been back at all. He didn't get food. He didn't nothing. He just walked immediately upstairs and told Trishelle. So, at first glance, I want to be on Trishelle's side at the beginning of this argument that Katie should have been the one to tell her. But at the same time, it seems like Derek walked immediately up there and Katie merely paused to grab a plate of food on her way immediately upstairs. So don't know whose side I'm on, but we then get the real fight. The full thing breaks out. Again, we get the quick cut. We are shown that it is now 4:12 in the morning, which I thought old people slept. This is something I would expect maybe on a regular season of the challenge. People are drinking, they're up all night, and, they're hammered at 4 in the morning after having been drinking for the last 8+ hours, whatever it is, and two people get into it, wake up the whole rest of the house. They can't believe those people are still up, drinking, drunk, whatever. And that, if that was the situation, totally understandable. This one, first off, doesn't seem like anyone's necessarily been drinking. Maybe a glass of wine here or there, but it does not seem, they didn't have a cocktail hour on this one. They didn't really have like a big party or anything. Seems like came back from deliberation, had some food, everyone chilled a little bit. Everyone went to bed except for Katie and Trishelle, who once we see fighting are still in the clothes they were wearing previously. So it doesn't seem like they, went to bed and then somehow woke up or anything like that. They're just still up at 4 in the morning. And they've got words for each other. They are upset. Trishelle is blown away still over this. Katie didn't come tell me right away. We're supposed to be best friends. What the hell are you doing? I can't trust you. If I can't trust you, who do I trust in here? Kind of some classic Trishelle coming out, both the anger mixed with the tiny bit of paranoia mixed with, I'm just going to let it rip. I'm going to let this person have it. I got a little thing to go with here, so we're going to run with it. Couple amazing quotes during it. Katie with the I don't live like this anymore. Subtle diss of Trishelle being the one to kind of instigating all of this, but also a great callback to Katie being, this being something she was known for, had a reputation for in the past, and trying to say, this isn't me anymore. This isn't what I want to be a part of. Trishelle throwing I have babysat you, wiped your ass for 6 full years. Just vicious. I hope that's not literally true, that when they lived together for 6 years as full-on grown adults in their 20s or 30s, that she was wiping Katie's ass. But I get what she's going for. But in the end, Katie full-on wins this argument in my mind just because of how she ends it. There's a lot of back and forth. Everyone is woken up. Huge blowout. But at the very end, Katie goes with the full flex and says, you know what, Trishelle, if you're so mad at me, if you don't like me so much, you want to see me out of this house, go ahead and tell Nehemiah to save Kendall and put me in the elimination, and let's do this one-on-one. I'll go against you in the elimination. Calls her out, steps up to the plate, throws down the gauntlet, and Trishelle has no reply. Immediately, does not, for game purposes, especially if you're mad at her, with respect to Katie, if I'm choosing Kendall versus Katie to go into elimination against, I'm choosing Katie if I'm Trishelle. So she throws it out there. Hey, I don't care. If you want to end this fight by walking over to Nehemiah and telling him, pull out Kendall, throw in Katie, let's do this. Awesome. But Trishelle immediately backs down. And for that, Katie, absolute winner of this confrontation. And to come back all the way around full circle to what we opened this with, of they kind of set these two up as best friends. The layers kind of get pulled back during this fight. We find out that, yes, in fact, they were the best of friends, but that it might have been a while since that was the case, that those 6 years living together sounds like they were immediately after the times they were on the television shows together back, in the mid and late 2000s, and that, they were in those weddings a long time ago, and that maybe, while they don't give years specific, Katie kind of hints that maybe in the last 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it's been, as her family life has grown, as her career outside of the reality world has grown, that they maybe haven't kept in touch, haven't been, that she wasn't coming in thinking they were the best of friends the way Trishelle was. She was happy to see her old pal, her old living roommate, her old, one of her besties from a time past, but it was a time past to her. So we get a little clarity on that. But good to know that the best friends thing was real. We truly do had best friends on the show, not just best friends in the house that claim to be best friends. So good to see, but we kind of get a little clarity on that. And with that, that's everything we've got noted down about the deliberation. We will now move on to the final segment of the show. That is the elimination. So we head into the elimination. We know it's Kendall versus Trishelle. We know Nehemiah has the lifesaver. Still don't know exactly what it does other than it saves it sounds like they haven't actually made it 100% clear, but by the wording, he can only save the person nominated. He couldn't save Trishelle in this instance, the one that was immediately put in elimination for losing the challenge. Can only save the person nominated. We don't know what happens if they go about with that saving. Nehemiah chooses not to use it. So we get Kendall versus Trishelle in an absolute challenge classic. Back to what we said earlier, it seems like for the betterment of the season, because of this shortened season, every elimination, every daily challenge we get is going to be an absolute classic one. I doubt they're going to try anything that we haven't seen. These are all going to be ones we've seen not just once or twice in the past, but repeatedly in the past, and that fans love and that they love, the challengers love themselves. We get Not So Fast, the big jungle gym with the big, heavy rope. I forget how long they say exactly the rope is, but you'll get 20 minutes to wind the rope in, out, around, through, all around this jungle gym. Then you unstrap yourself, switch with the other person, and you get as much time as needed first to unwind what their competitor has wound up for them. I will say about Not So Fast, it might be my actual favorite elimination as far as eliminations I desperately would love to get to do in real life, would love to try this just with my friends or whatever, not even like on the show, which brings me to an idea that I have had for a long time. I don't know how it exists. If anyone out there listening wants to invest what I would assume would probably be millions and millions of dollars to help me make this come to fruition, but I have always argued that there should be some sort of amusement park-like place that fans of the challenge can go, and potentially I throw in Survivor with it. I put them together. Fans of the challenge or Survivor, maybe even some other reality shows out there, some sort of reality television amusement park where you can go with your friends and actually try some of these daily challenges, elimination matches, and different games and things that they have on these shows. Challenge and Survivor being the two most that every time I'm watching, all I want is I wish there was somewhere I could go and I could try these things and know either how hard they are, how much fun they are. I always, especially with something like Not So Fast, I'm always thinking through what is the actual good strategy? What is the best strategy for depending on people's athletic abilities or their competitors' athletic or mental capacities, and I wish there was a place we could all go try this. So if you're out there listening, if you agree, there should be an amusement park where you can go do challenge games, challenge eliminations, Survivor games, maybe stuff from other reality competition shows that I'm not particularly watching. That would be fun. Send your investment money to me here at the Challenge Historian. We'll get that going. But Not So Fast, always one of my favorites, one that I would love to get to try. And with this round, Kendall versus Trishelle, it's not exactly the greatest Not So Fast performance we've ever seen. They both choose to go with the strategy of, I'm just going to make a big old knot in the middle of this jungle gym, just on the ground. I'm not even going to bother going up and around and through. I'm not even going to use the jungle gym. I'm just going to walk to the middle of this thing, pull the rope in there, and then I'm just going to start going in and under and around, looping the rope. I'm just going to make a big old knot, which is a strategy for sure. And, again, I don't know exactly what the best strategy in this game is. You could definitely say there's an argument this is as good of a strategy as any. I do think a part of it, especially on Trichelle's side, as we would see once they switch places, that she was a little nervous about the endurance of the whole thing. So maybe that's why she went with I'm not going to bother wasting any energy trying to climb around this stuff. I'm just going to sit here in the middle and try to weave a damn good knot and hope for the best. Kendall, at least early, the first, kind of went around and through a time or two before also just going with I'm just going to stand here and make a big old knot and see how it goes. But interesting strategy. Definitely the first time in the elimination, that we see kind of the age and the less physical side come through with bringing these OGs back. But they both do a great job. They make a complete mess of their rope. And it does look like it's going to be very, very difficult to get apart. They switch places, and Kendall just runs away with it. She breezes through, untangling everything Trishelle had knotted up. She gets it out while Trichelle's still sitting there with a big old knot at her feet. Kendall wins, kind of going away, and gets that victory, her second elimination victory in her history, second in 2 tries. We'll come back in our little challenge history segment here at the end. We're actually going to talk about Kendall's record and where it is in the history books. But Trishelle takes the loss. She is eliminated. The only thing really to say about a slightly uneventful elimination is the coaching from the sideline. Darrell specifically is Kendall's coach the whole time. There's 4 or 5 people all yelling, trying to help Trishelle, rooting her on. Only person really saying anything on Kendall's behalf and not even just cheering, but coaching is Darrell. And it got me kind of thinking, as Kendall notes in her interview, she's thrilled to have Darrell helping her out, coaching her through. She's listening to whatever he says, doing whatever he says, acting like, he's the coach, I'm the player, I'm doing everything he says, and I'm going to get this win. It works out just like that. But it got me thinking that, this is a common occurrence in the past, that it's not just the competitors in the elimination, but now that everyone's there watching, you can have people yell out, help you out, coach you through. Who would be my top sideline coach to have? And I think Darrell, at least on the men's side, might be my top pick, just, between... He has a background in training, so he knows how to, yell out clear commands. He knows a little bit about coaching, having that background as a boxing trainer. He has as much experience with these games as anyone, and he's also very good at the game, so you can trust a bit. Not only has he seen them, played them, but he's kind of figured out how to do them and play them all well, so you can kind of trust what he's saying to you. So I think Darrell, definitely, I'm going to have to think about it more, maybe on a future episode, or maybe a breakout YouTube video or something. We'll come up with who's my preferred sideline coach in an elimination, but Darrell definitely near the top of that list. So that's the elimination. Trishelle goes home. Great having her back. Glad that we got one, kind of classic Trishelle blow up out of it. Good to see she's doing well. She exits. Kendall gets the win, comes back to the house looking like a stronger competitor than she did going in. And so that kind of wraps up our section by section breakdown. We will now move into some of the awards for this episode. It's awards time. Let's go first with the best quote of the episode. We did before best quote / moment. We're just going to make it best quote. Any great moments that come without the actual quote with them, we will obviously touch on in our in-depth recap of the section by section of the episode. So we're just going to go with best quote from now on. And this one, a few candidates. We've mentioned most of them as we went through that breakdown of the full episode. The only one we didn't that is a candidate that doesn't quite come in first place, but worth pointing out, upon elimination, Trishelle, in her kind of exit interview, post-elimination, post-loss, gives a great quote and advice for anyone thinking about coming back on the challenge that maybe it wasn't the case back when she was on before, but is now. Listen up. Here's Trishelle's advice for anyone coming back to the show.
I had a good time, and if you're planning on doing a challenge, go to the gym. Do not sit by a pool and drink cocktails all day.
Then we've also got referenced earlier, but mid-fight between Katie and Trishelle, while there's a lot of good back and forth, A lot of good disses flying both ways. The one moment that stood out during that, the best quote of that entire fight for me was just Katie simply saying, I don't live like this anymore.
Back to who we were 20 years ago. I don't live like this anymore. I mean, I have a family, I have a kid, husband. Maybe in my 20s, it was easy, but I can't do it today.
Both worthy candidates, however, neither of them comes close to the winner for best quote of the episode, which we're going to give a three-way tie to TJ Lavin for all three quotes we played for you early on during trivia. Again, was just an absolute stud. Everything he said was hilarious, was entertaining. He was so on point with everything. If we have to pick an actual winner of the three quotes we played earlier, we are going to go with his just evisceration of Katie for guessing one as to how many elimination participants there were on the island. Let's hear it again one more time just for good measure.
So, Katie, how many players participated in the elimination rounds on the island?
One.
Oh my God, Katie, it is an elimination round. How would one just play in himself? Like, what is he
They
gonna
didn't
do?
even have challenges on that show.
I mean, it was three, Katie. So I'm gonna need you to take a step and say, see you later.
That's your best quote from your best host, which leads us right into the MVP of this episode 2 All-Stars season. Now, a bunch of candidates here. First, we'll shout out to Kendall, wins the elimination. Anyone that wins an elimination is always up as a candidate for the MVP, but she also paired that elimination win with a very poor performance in the daily challenge, which is what led to being in the elimination in the first place. You know, she has the one nice conversation with Derek, but really doesn't offer a lot within the episode other than just getting that win and looking impressive in the elimination. So candidate, yes, does not get the win for that. Then there's Trishelle, who definitely is one of the stars of the episode for sure, which is a big portion of just being the MVP. You don't necessarily have to win everything to be the MVP of an episode by any means. You just got to be the star. You got to bring the most value to the table, most valuable person of the episode. Trishelle is definitely a candidate for that. Both, she's involved in everything the entire episode through. She loses first at the elimination, which means she's a big part of the deliberation. She's in the she loses in the daily challenge, which leads to her going into the elimination. She's a part of the deliberation. She has this big fight with Katie. Her and Katie's story is kind of the main backstory of the entire episode. But given that she did get last at the daily challenge and did lose the elimination, as much as she was bringing a lot of value to this episode and the episode was really focused on her, we can't give her the MVP when she, was 0 for 2 in the actual competitive part of it, and 0 for 3 if you count the fact that we think Katie won that war of words, which brings us to our third candidate. Katie did win, in our estimation, that kind of war of words, with Trishelle came out of that looking slightly better. Neither of them really looks bad. It's just it's a very obvious thing. Friendships are tough over long, long years, and definitely could see as the kind of layers came back there and we realized maybe Katie didn't feel the same way years after this great relationship that Trishelle did. That's a really tough spot to be in. So I don't think anyone looked bad in that fight at all. Good television, good entertaining. I do think just with that last, throwing down that gauntlet the way Katie did of saying, pull me into elimination, let's see what happens, and Trishelle backing down. Katie won that war. She also was great entertainment in the trivia challenge. I don't know how it happened again, but that she got a bloody nose upon falling in the water. She has, hands down, without even having to review the history or the footage or anything, her fall back that they showed in this, where she runs, jumps across, smacks her face on the platform she's trying to jump onto, does about 4 somersaults in the air, and then smacks her face into the water on prior season, is the worst fall in challenge history for sure. Is brutal. So she has every right to be terrified of falling in the water, but she falls down straight, pencil formation, feet first, just like everyone else. She's a little tilted forward, so I get her face kind of hits the water a tiny bit again, but it just feels so bad for her that her face gets bloodied up again a little bit. She handles it well, as expected. She's a complete champ about it. She has an all-around good episode as a featured player within the episode, but not quite our MVP. Aneesa, the final candidate that does not get the MVP title, but worth mentioning, both dominates trivia carries the interviews as always great in the interview room, being a producer in the field. And from a player perspective, if this award had to go to one of the players, Aneesa would be the MVP of this episode for sure, but she loses out because the MVP of this episode is Mr. TJ Lavin himself. When it's trivia time, when TJ is on point, given his A-plus trivia performance like he is, there can be no other MVP. I think this was his best performance he has ever given in, maybe not the full episode, but in a daily challenge for sure. He is just on point the whole way through. We've talked about it. He won the best quote. We talked about him at length during talking about the daily challenge itself. When I remember this episode, I will remember it for TJ being ruthless, hilarious, and that laugh over and over and over at the trivia challenge. Give this man, pardon my language here, but give this man a fucking Emmy already. Blows me away every year when the Emmys roll around. I think, hey, maybe the challenge is going to finally get its due. Maybe at least they can offer, there's a literal award for best host of a reality television show. And our guy, TJ Lavin, never gets any love. I still don't know that he's ever even been nominated, which is just absolute slander. But he's definitely never won. Jeff Probst, meanwhile, deservingly has like 4, 5, 6 of these awards. But he has plenty enough. It has been recognized enough. Give TJ Lavin the award for the best reality host. Please, Emmys, if you're out there listening, this man deserves it. This episode is his highlight reel to submit this year. He's the MVP of the episode. On to the power rankings coming out of episode 2. Small but potentially significant changes. We're going to go with the women's side first. We're still going to keep it women and men separate power rankings until we get a little later in the season and we start to get more of that. We know ultimately only one person, at least what they've said so far, only one person is going to win the overall prize. But for now, we're doing these power rankings, men separate from women, who we think will make the final mixed with who we think is going to win this show or is in the best position to make the final and win. On the women's side, well, quiet episode from her. We're still putting Kellyanne at the top of this list. She is clearly kind of looked at by the other ladies as probably one of the most physically fit people here, the one that they don't want to go up against now that they're kind of seeing these eliminations being of the physical variety. I'm going to keep her at number 1. She seems to have plenty of friends in the house. No one seems to be targeting her. And if anyone on the women's side has a little bit of that fear factor brewing maybe in the background there, I think it's her. So she's my top spot. Kendall leaps up to number 2, both because it seems like she does have good friends and alliances in the house, and that just the only reason she ended up in this elimination because of what she did in the daily challenge, and that led to being kind of an easy vote even for her allies and friends to make. But now that she's proved herself, everyone, you know, when they first throw her name out in a little powwow between Trishelle and Mark and Kellyanne and everyone immediately post daily challenge, when Kendall's name is initially thrown out, they do even mention, well, do you want to go against Kendall? She's out there doing yoga every day. She seems pretty fit. She seems pretty strong. So now then getting to put that on display and proving it and having a really great resounding victory in the elimination, I think she is going to move up along with Kellyanne as being kind of that top physical competitor. And as we'll talk about in a moment, has a much bigger resume and reputation than you'd think for her short time on the challenge. She's my number 2 spot. Aneesa comes in 3rd. I think it's almost a shoo-in. Aneesa is going to get to the final. Whether she can get that first win or not, we will see. But both the relationships with everyone loves Aneesa, as they should. She's got great allies across the board. She's very good at the daily challenges, already getting her first win here today. If she has to go into elimination with the eliminations we're seeing and the ones we know probably coming forward with, hall brawl is going to happen. It seems like pole wrestle is going to happen. Balls in's probably going to happen. If I were to guess, all of those, I'm taking Aneesa over anyone in the house probably in all 3 of those eliminations. She's also done at least pole wrestle a time or 2. I think she's done balls in once. I don't know if she's ever actually had to do a hall brawl. They've only there's not as many ladies that have done that one over the years. I don't think she ever did, but I would take her over anyone in the house in any of those situations. So expecting those to be the eliminations, knowing her alliances, knowing her experience level, I think she's almost a shoo-in for the final. I just don't know, depending what level of final it is, where she's going to fall once she gets there. On the men's side, power rankings barely change. Mark Long still number 1. We talked about earlier why. Seems like he's got everyone in the house, kind of feels like they owe him one for being there. And so he already would have had strong alliances going in, and they're even made stronger by that position as the one who put this all together. Darrell moves up to number 2 for me on his own, to number 2 previously in the 3rd spot, tied with Derek, now 2 all alone. He just looks really comfortable. He hasn't, he didn't win either the daily challenges. He hasn't been in the elimination, but just from a comfort level, the experience of being around these most recent seasons of the challenge is coming through when they're standing up there on the dais at the eliminations, when they're in the deliberations, when they're, just hanging out at the house. He clearly is comfortable being there, comfortable with anything that's going to get thrown at him, feels confident in his abilities versus all these other people, and I'm confident in them too. Feels like, he's just in a really good place mentally, is in as good a place physically as most any of these guys. He's my number 2. Coming in 3rd, Alton, still flying under the radar. We've barely seen any of him these first 2 episodes, but we've seen enough shirtless Alton to know that athleticism is still there. Seems like no one, if anyone's going to call out anyone into the elimination, I would be shocked if Alton is one of their quick picks to throw into elimination. Of the guys that really look to be bringing it on the physical side, I guess maybe he would be picked, depending which elimination it is, before a Mark or a Letarian that have a little more size and strength versus just the overall physical abilities and athleticism. But he's my number 3. Derek falls out of the power rankings for me. I don't know why, just because I feel like Darrell has kind of separated himself from Derek, who I had those 2 tied before, kind of throwing a 4th person in. So maybe Derek's still in 4th, who knows? But that's my top 3 on the guys' side: Mark, Darrell, Alton. Women's side: Kellyanne, Kendall, Anissa. That's the power rankings. Overall, the grade for the episode, I'm going with a B+, maybe A-. Is a very good episode. The elimination, while a great a classic elimination game that I get excited to see, wasn't all that climactic or that great of a battle, but the trivia is the best daily challenge we get every time, and this one was an A+ trivia, so that those kind of balance each other out. There was some good stuff in the house. I'm going to go with A- for the overall episode grade. And then we'll move into our final segment. We did not do this on the first episode of the season, but we are going to add it in here probably every episode moving forward, potentially not each one if there isn't a good anecdote lead into it, but we're going to have a little history lesson to end every episode here of the challenge story. And obviously we want to talk about what's currently happening on these seasons, but we also want to bring you a little bit of that challenge history, those challenge resumes, some of those stats and facts from yesteryear that you may not either be privy to or may not remember as much, but to help put everything we've seen over the years into perspective. We're going to have a history lesson at the end of almost every episode of this podcast. So with that, today's history lesson, get your books out, get your notes out. We're going to have a good first lesson here. And that first lesson is in regards to Kendall. Kendall gets her elimination win here. We mentioned earlier that's her 2nd ever elimination win in 2 tries. And that is because Kendall is one of those one and done champions, of which there's a few of them over the years, but that went in, did 1 season of the challenge, and won it, and then left. Went 100% titles across the board every season she ever did. She won that perfect record. She is one of only 20 players to have ever won every season they were on. Of those 20 players, only 2 of them have been on more than 1 season. So 18 of the 20 people who have a perfect winning the challenge record is because they've been on 1 season, they won, and they never came back. 2 people, Ronnie Martin did it twice. He went 2 for 2. Jamie Murray, who we'll come back to in a moment, went 3 for 3 in his challenge career. But Kendall was one of those 20 players to go 1 for 1, one challenge victory. And she is also one of only 7 players to do that 1 for 1 while also having to face elimination rounds. So again, there's 20 players ever that have went either 1 for 1 or in one case 2 for 2 or one case 3 for 3, but 20 people who have perfect every challenge they've ever been on, they have won. But of those 20, only 7 of them were in the era of having to face eliminations, or possibly just 1 or 2 of them might have avoided all eliminations on the seasons, but a handful of them were people that were on it and won. 3 of those 20 are people that won season 2 Real World Rules Challenge before there was eliminations, and a handful of others never saw an elimination. So 7 people have the perfect elimination and challenge victory record, Kendall being one of them. The other people our newest addition to that, fresh off of it, just this last week, is Amber B on Double Agents. Her first season, gets the win and goes 2-0 in elimination. So perfect challenge record from an elimination and championship standpoint. Going back, the earliest ones ever were Kendall and Christina Pyle, both on the Inferno, both their first rookie season. They got the win. Both of them, Christina and Kendall, on that season went 1-0 in eliminations, won the final, never to be seen again until now. Kendall has come back. We also had Sam McGinn on Battle of the Seasons 2 on the San Diego team, along with Zach, Frank, Ashley, and Sam was the fourth member of that team. She has never been back on the challenge, went 1-for-1 with titles, went 2-0 in eliminations, including one of the kind of all-time elimination wins with her and Zach facing off in the Hall Brawl versus CJ. And I apologize to CJ's partner, who I'm not remembering at the moment, but an amazing Hall Brawl she took part in. So she has that perfect record. Then both Fresh Meat 1 and 2 featured the winner being a one-and-done champ. Fresh Meat 1, Aviv, came in. Darrell's partner, they went all the way. They won. She went 1-0 in those eliminations. Then on Fresh Meat 2, same thing happened. Carly Johnson comes in, partners up with Landon, goes all the way. She goes 2-0 in eliminations. They get that win. They're one and done. So we've had 7 people over the years do that. Kendall is one of those and now has her first elimination win here on All-Stars. We'll see. Maybe she goes all the way. Maybe she gets the win. Maybe she joins Ronnie Martin and Jamie Murray as the only people to ever go perfect record in multiple seasons deep. Going way back, Darrell is the longest person to ever go. He went 4-for-4. His first 4 seasons he won. He's obviously been on a bunch of seasons since and ended that perfect streak, but he had the longest perfect streak to start a challenge career. So I guess, that's still on the table for Kendall if she wins this and there's more seasons of the challenge. But to finish this history lesson out, Kendall continues being a part of that history of the perfect challenge resume, but is worth shouting out. We said him earlier, Jamie Murray, under the radar. He will definitely be at least mentioned when we eventually do a big breakdown of challenge GOATs. But as far as people who maybe you wouldn't think of right away as challenge legends that maybe should have been back on this season of All-Stars, I don't know if he was invited or not or wanted to come or not, but Jamie Murray back 3-for-3. He was on Extreme Challenge, Battle of the Sexes, then took a little bit of a break, came back one more time on Gauntlet 2, went 3-for-3, 3 challenges, 3 titles. However, never faced an elimination, but the first 2 seasons of those Extreme Challenge, Battle of the Sexes, there were not eliminations on, so he never had to worry about one there. Gauntlet 2, there were. He never got voted into one, so never had to face an elimination in his career. He was always in the power position. He was a couple of those seasons came with a tribunal-like situation where he went 14 out of 15. 15 times there was a tribunal possibility. He made it 14 of those times, so was always just staying in position of power. He won 22 of the 47 daily challenges. He competed at almost a 50% success rate. So Jamie Murray under the radar, in the GOAT conversation, not going to be one of the GOATs. The 3 seasons isn't quite enough, but is the greatest champion of all time as far as going with that perfect record, 3-for-3, 3 seasons, 3 titles. That is your history lesson for the day, and that is it for this episode of The Challenge Historian. I have been your host, Jacob Hollaball. This has been The Challenge All-Stars Episode 2 recap. Thank you so very much for being here. We've got a great preview of next week's episode of the All-Stars, so we'll be back again as soon as that airs. We'll get it watched, get it recapped, get that right out to you. Make sure you can always follow along for extra challenge content on Instagram at The Challenge Historian, or check out our YouTube channel, Challenge Historian, or The Challenge Historian on YouTube. There will be some additional content and separate videos going up. That's where in the near future you're going to be finding the GOAT conversations. That's where you're going to see some of my pitches for different ideas for different formats of shows they could be doing, a whole lot more, a bunch of extra content coming there. So check out that YouTube channel, follow along on Instagram, and make sure to follow, rate, subscribe, review. Give us 5 stars as you can on that Apple Podcast. Follow on Spotify, wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. Make sure to follow along so we know you're out there listening. Those reviews and ratings are extremely appreciated and helpful, so thank you for those. Thank you for being here. That's all for today. I will talk to you guys again soon. Challenge Historian signing out.